We have to talk about Chris Lake appearing on Kai Cenat's stream and why that even happened in the first place. When you think of Chris Lake, it's possible you think major artist, but not that major, has been in the game for a very long time, but most people stop right there. Chris's story is one of overcoming great pressure and almost having given up on everything. There's things you might not know about Chris Lake, like his original artist name and the multitude of labels he has founded, curated for, and collaborated with. One of the better documented but still largely unknown facts is that Chris Lake is one of the creators of Fisher's greatest hits, such as Losing It, Stop It, and You Kiddin'. He's only officially credited as co-producer, but you go over the similarities between the sound selection and production, you'll find it hard to tell them apart. But let's go back in time to where it all began. Back in 2002, Christopher Daniel Lake was making bootlegs of popular songs under the artist name Christophe Dabuc.
One of the things I used to do a lot was recreate like dance classics.
Bootlegging has never been legal, and yet it is how so many currently famous DJs have made it in the industry. The process is simple. Take a famous song, remix it, play it in front of a crowd, maybe even sell some copies. All without notifying or asking for permission from the original songwriters, producers, or labels. Well, in 2003, Chris attempted to create his own first record label, and he called it Cuba Recordings. They released 39 singles over the years, none of which created major success, unfortunately. The label was only able to continue until 2006, which was when it was put up for liquidation. While all this was going down, between attempting to make his own music work and the record label work, he was working in a fish processing factory with his father, and even ended up getting an extra job working at the Royal Mail. After the dissolution of Cuba Recordings, he established Rising Music and Rising Tracks and Chris Lake Entertainment Limited. In doing so, he put himself under immense pressure, even having to rely on his own family, having shown no real success at this point. Anyone rational would cut their losses and try a different career path. Chris understood this, and so he gave himself an ultimatum, stating that if he didn't achieve some sort of major breakthrough within a year, he would give up on his dreams entirely.
I had to make it work, and I remember in the last year of me working at the post office, I was like, okay, I've got to set myself a goal. And I think my goal was just to have one song do something significant to justify me continuing on with my career. Otherwise, I'd pivot and I'd pursue another career path. Honestly, for the good of my family, if anything else, because I'm driving them mad working on this dance stuff all the time.
To add more flames to the fire, around this time, people did not have the tools we have today to make music. Things like FL did begin to exist, but it was far more rudimentary, and music production still required analog equipment, often costing thousands of pounds back then.
And that's where I really learned how expensive this can all be. So, I had to buy a keyboard, synthesizer, drum machine, mixer, tape machine, all of these things, the cables to put it all together just to start making a really, really, really terrible beat.
The benefits of the digital world really did not exist yet. You guys don't know how good you have it when you pair FL Studio and the internet together. You can do anything. Luckily for Chris, somehow in 2006, his years of struggle seemed to come to an end when he collaborated with Alternative Roots Recordings to release Changes. Changes ended up hitting the UK singles chart at number 27. That's a huge accomplishment, especially when you keep in mind that this chart included all genres of music. It even got the attention of Universal Music, who bought the rights to release the single worldwide. In fact, when you break down the discography of this single Changes, you will see that suddenly everyone wanted a part of Chris Lake. See, publishing was split between Harappa Music and Copyright Control. Phonographic rights were controlled by Alternative Root Recordings. Copyright was eventually given to Universal Island Records. It was added to the Apollo Recordings and Universal Music catalogs. Convoluted much? Following this success, Chris collaborated with Nervous Records in 2007 to release Carry Me Away. A very similar story with this one. This release was legally split between Nervous Records, Paprika Beat, Vendetta Records, NEWS, and Chris's new own record label, Rising Music. He would continue to release music with relatively mediocre success, but he would also end up collaborating with Defected, appearing in their compilations, remixes, and even releases. Now, if you don't know, Defected is one of the most powerful independent electronic and house music record labels. See, in the early 2000s, they were funded by the Ministry of Sound Group, which is known to own one of the UK's biggest nightclubs, Ministry of Sound. Therefore, defected artists often perform there as resident DJs for years on end. What this meant for Chris Lake is that suddenly, He had thousands of club goers see him perform on a potentially weekly basis. Personally, I don't know, I wasn't exactly old enough. 2011 to 2013, a big time jump, but suddenly we're getting into the Mainstage era of Chris Lake. I'm talking Boneless. Yes, y'all almost forgot about this major hit. 2012, Chris Lake signed with Ultra Records, and given that Chris was killing it in the UK and Western Europe, and at the same time Tujamo and Steve Aoki, who were also tied with Ultra, were killing it in the Americas, it's likely that Ultra was the reason they paired up for the collaboration of a lifetime. Around this time, he also collaborated with other North American artists such as Dr. Fresh and Deadmau5, and when it comes to labels like Mousetrap and Ausla. In fact, Chris would later go on to curate Osla's most popular compilation, Housela. Chris Lake would prove again and again his ability to release radio hits consistently, forming long-time collaborations with labels and other artists. Most notably the collaboration between himself and the other English Chris Lorenzo. These two would form Anti-Up, focusing on highly modulated acid dark sounds. And we already know about the collaboration between Chris and Fisher. Interestingly, over the recent years, while Chris Lake has been fostering a huge following in the Americas, Fisher has seized the UK market alongside Australia. Every other Aussie will know Fisher. Comment down below if you're an Aussie and you know Fisher. I mean, you probably know Fisher not because you're Aussie, but anyway. It seems that Chris Lake has found a way to diversify his music in all markets of the world. If you see it in a certain way, you can kind of look at it like Chris Lake through Fisher in Australia and Europe, Chris Lake through Anti-Up in North and South America, and through Chris Lake himself in Europe and North America. And recently, Chris has been attempting to return home with collaborations between himself and the UK's favourites, Sammy Virji and MPH. One could argue that Sammy Virji has a larger following and fan base than Chris Lake, but this is exactly my point. Chris's experience not only in music production, but behind the scenes, his connections within the music industry that he carefully fostered over the decades proved to be greater than they appear. Which brings us to Blackbook. This is Chris Lake's current mega project. It is well reported that Blackbook back in 2016 was originally created in order for Chris Lake to have a place where he could release his own tracks with full control. It was in a way like a self-distribution label. But then following the success after curating Housela, he actually signed Walker & Royce, Louis Vuitton, Wade, Eli Brown, Noizu, Clune, Biscuits, and so many more down the line. With great success, these artists are currently still touring the world, demonstrating that Chris really does push his vision of empowering these artists and giving them the funds and tools they need to achieve greatness. It yet again shows that Chris Lake likes to work behind the scenes. In 2020, after years of steady growth, Blackbook partnered with Astralworks under Capitol Music Group in order to utilize Capitol's well-developed worldwide distribution infrastructure. Fancy words to say, Capitol had the tools to bring Blackbook from imprint record label to worldwide big label. Which brings us to today, 2025, unless you're watching this video 10 years down the line. Chris and Blackbook just released their first ever album. After multiple decades, we are at the very cusp of discovering what Blackbook will be able to do with this release. But what we do know is that the promotion is highly strategic. You see, it's 2025, right? What is the zeitgeist right now? It's a tough question, but it's safe to say live streaming is insanely lucrative right now. A single person with a computer and a phone camera has the ability to produce generational wealth by being charming. And that's not a dig at the industry, it's just how it is. Change with the times. Kai Cenat is currently the biggest live streamer, having peaked over 1 million concurrent viewers. That's not views. That's 1 million people concurrently watching together at the same time. Just imagine 1 million people viewing a billboard on Times Square with undivided attention. Their eyes are on the billboard. And just to put it into perspective, at max capacity, which is 7 people per square meter, you can only fit 120,000 people in Times Square. But we're talking about 1 million. Keeping that in mind, Chris Lake basically made himself the billboard for 30 minutes on Kai Cenat's stream, DJing his entire new album. He even gave his speech to Kai's viewers at the very end. And given that the big 4 labels, Universal, Sony, Warner, and EMI, have not capitalized on this strategy yet, we can only assume that we'll be seeing so much more of this in the future. It's an untapped audience with untapped potential. 10 years ago, you would have been dreaming about potential conversion rates with that many viewers. Dedicated viewers, viewers that have paid to be there. For anyone that's watching right now, what you can take away from Chris Lake is that resilience and strategy always wins. Change with the times, start live streaming or partner up with a streamer, create content, attract views. This is 2025, who knows what's going to be popular in the next 5 years. But in today's age, viewers are your best friends. They are the key to potential gates. Of course, I don't want to be the one to say this, I don't like to say this, but I could go on about how true talent should always be the reason why people succeed. But just be aware that you need to get out there and present yourself if you want a shot in this industry. I know I'm going to pick up some backlash for saying that, and I respect your counter perspectives, and I would be happy to have a conversation in the comments or down below in our Discord community, which you can check the link in the description. I just want to hear your opinion on this. Should we hide viewership so that the gatekeepers can only judge us based on our talent? It's a really good point. Just think about Spotify not showing the amount of streams a song has, so that A&Rs can only judge our music based off the music and not the popularity. But what you can do is drop a like and subscribe on this video. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and let me know, do you want to see more videos like this? Because I usually don't do this. I usually teach music production. But I really liked making this. I spent days writing this script, going through research, and it's been really fun putting this together. So let me know guys. And hey, if you do want to support the channel, then do consider dropping a like and subscribing. I'm for real. But your undivided attention has been the thing that I have been most grateful of. There'll be a video that pops up on screen that I recommend you watch. I haven't decided yet, but I will decide in the edit. So it's gonna come up in a second. Peace.